Welcome to Living Freer. Today, I'm very excited to be able to show you off my fishing shirt. This is a special fishing shirt. Now, I love fishing, but I will tell you, I don't actually fish in this particular shirt. I wear it more for ministry events, evangelism and ministry. And it's special to me because it bears the name of my seminary, my alma mater, New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, which is important because normally they have terrible swag, but they outdid themselves on this occasion. But also because this shirt reminds me of my calling. It reminds me that I'm a fisher of men, and that's what I call it, my Fishers of Men shirt. And of course, that's a reference to when Jesus was walking along the Sea of Galilee and he sees Peter and Andrew and he shouts out to them and he calls them and he says, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men." And later he does the same with James and John. And what this shirt reminds me of is that I share that calling. In fact, every believer shares in that calling. If you are a follower of Christ, you share in that calling to become fishers of men. We are called, if you look in Matthew 28, to go and make disciples. In Mark, we're called to proclaim the gospel of Jesus to the whole world. We are called by God. And that so often for us comes in the form of us thinking of it as a chore, as something we have to do, as something we dread doing. But that's not the way we should be seeing it. We should look at it as a gift. You know, when I was in seminary, one of my first classes was an evangelism class under Dr. Delandrum Level, who was the president of the seminary and an evangelism professor. And he taught us about the concentric circles of concern. Now, most seminary students are going to learn about this. Many salespeople learn about this. But all it refers to is the circles of influence that you travel in. The innermost circle would be your family, and the outer circle would be like your best friends. And another circle out would be your acquaintances or co-workers. Another circle may be the people in your community, and then your nation and language group, and then eventually to the rest of the world. Your concentric circles of concern. And we become mindful of these circles because we are expected to use them intentionally to spread the gospel of Christ, to become a witness for Jesus to a lost world, to become fishers of men. I've tried to employ this in my life, not perfectly, but it has worked in some cases. In Tennessee, when I was living there, I tried to make sure I used the same dry cleaners and the same gas stations and everything else, because when you have co-workers and so forth, you can build strong relationships in just a matter of weeks. So those circles would take less time. But some of the circles would take more time. One of them, for instance, was a woman who worked at a pilot. Right down from my house. So no matter what the gas price was, I always got my fuel there because I wanted to make sure to slowly build connections with anybody who worked in that gas station. And this one lady worked there, and she could cuss like a sailor, and she would get on to the people in the store if they weren't shopping fast enough, or if they came up with their items and they forgot something and ran back for something, she would chew them out for that. And I made it my mission to try to not only get a little kernel of knowledge about her each time I talked to her, but also I tried to make her laugh, and that was a challenge. But over a couple of years, she got more and more familiar with me. And I got more familiar with her. And then one day I realized I was late for work, but I realized that there was something bothering her. And I rushed off, and I was halfway to work, and I just felt like God was saying, "Daryl, this is the open moment you needed. Go back and talk to her." And I went back and I talked to her. And the manager, who knew that I had been really working to reach her, let me have some time with her, gave her break time. And so we sat outside as she smoked, and I talked to her and I listened to her heart as she was broken over something that was going on with her son out in Arizona. And she asked if I could pray for him. And I said, of course. I said, "Do you mind if I pray right now?" And she was okay with that. And from that moment on, it opened up a door for her and I to dialogue. And about 6 to 8 months later, she came to know Jesus Christ. I connected her with a pastor who would disciple her. She spent 3 years there before she moved out west with her son. But by the time she left, she was an on-fire follower of Jesus. And all it took was God reminding me to take advantage of those circles of influence to proclaim his name. So when I came to Irving, 6 weeks in Irving, God laid on my heart to use these 6 weeks to still practice and employ that little idea about going and make sure that I am proclaiming intentional about relationship building, even if it's only for 6 weeks. My first day I went to Cracker Barrel, and I got to know a couple of ladies at the Cracker Barrel down in Grapevine, trying to get to know them and build relationships. There's a few other places in Grapevine and here in Irving and a few other places that I've tried to slowly get to know somebody. Right here at the hotel, the staff that works down at the hotel, I've tried to slowly build a relationship with them, looking for openings to share the hope of Jesus. And the thing is that one of the things that God has been doing with me, because God has been refocusing and reminding me of this practice. I mean, you get into the habit of it, and then pretty soon it becomes such a routine that you forget how intentional you're supposed to be. But God was sitting there going, Daryl, I'm going to remind you of what I want to do through you. But he also reminded me that it's not a chore, that it's not something to dread. I've gotten a little bit excited about it. Not just because I get to have pancakes when I go to Cracker Barrel, but because I get to share the hope of Christ with people that I'm just getting to know. Hebrews chapter 12 talks about this a little bit. Therefore, since we receive a kingdom which cannot be shaken, let's show gratitude by which we may offer to God an acceptable service with reverence and awe. See, I remember, even though I got saved at a young age, I remember that I was living a life where my future was eternal death, and God took me from death to life. And the relief that I felt in my salvation was something to celebrate. But it was also something that put me in awe and in reverence of God. And that's what I want to do. I want to please God. But how selfish of me would it be if I never shared that with somebody else? And then I remembered, my sharing Christ with somebody else is going to give them that same experience that I've had. On top of that, it's going to please my Savior. We serve a living God who doesn't need us. If we don't praise his name, the rocks will cry out. He does not need us. We need him. So for him to choose to use us, to include us in his mission, in his work, outside of salvation itself, it's got to be about the greatest privilege that anybody on earth is offered. To be used of God. To be fishers of men. Today, God has led me to the point of falling in love again with being in his service. And so what I am thankful for today is that God chooses to gift us with the privilege of being used by him. That's day 2.